everyone! Today we will be talking about setting Redux Sagas with React.js application. But before we will start, remember about subscribing our channel if you don't do it yet, and about turning the notifications, and give us some thumbs up! Hello everyone, and welcome in the next video. Today we will continue with React.js, and we are going to set up a simple React.js application with Redux, and then we will use Redux-Saga middleware to connect with API. If you would like to find out more about state management, about tools like Redux, or about middleware, about Redux-Thunk and Redux-Saga, feel free to visit us in our blog. I will leave you the link in the description to the article where you have a lot more about theory, and here we are going to make it more practical, and let's go to the computer! Okay, so we have to start from creating a new React.js application, so let's open your console and let's navigate to the folder where you're keeping your applications. And let's start with create React app. We've already done that a few times, but if you don't know how to do it, just follow me. I've called my application Redux app. It might take a second. Cool. Now let's go to our application folder and let's use yarn start to run the application to see if everything is correct. Okay, so we have our React.js app, the default one. And right now the next step is to install all the necessary libraries. So let's start with yarn add Redux. Next, let's install yarn add React Redux. Okay, when it's done, we can open the code of the application to set up our Redux folder structure. Cool. So, inside the src folder, let's create a folder called Redux. Inside the Redux folder, let's create two more folders. One will be actions and one will be reducers. When that's ready, we can create the additional file, which will be called store.js. Okay, when it's created, we need to connect our store with our React.js application. For that, let's go to the index.js file. And here inside this file, we need to import provider from React's Redux, and we also need to import our store from store.js. It's empty right now, but we are going to place some code in a second. Cool. Now to make sure that our application is connected with the store, we need to put provider as a wrapper for our application. And inside the provider, we need to pass the store. Let's align it. Okay, great. So this step is done. And right now we need to create our store. So let's go back to store.js file and let's import create store from Redux. Next, let's import root reducer, which doesn't exist yet, but we are going to create it in a second. And now we can define a constant called store, which will call method createStore with a root reducer inside. Our root reducer will be collection of reducers combined together, and that will be our store. And let's export the store so it will be available inside our React.js application. Great! Right now probably we should create our root reducer. So let's go to the reducers folder and let's create index.js file there. Let's import combine reducers from Redux. And let's define the constant root reducer, which will have a method combine reducers, and inside this method we will be passing our reducers. We don't have any yet, but we'll just leave here an empty space. And at the end, let's export that to make it available inside the store. Let's save. Okay, inside our reducers folder, let's create file users.js, because users will be our main point of this application. And let's start by importing all as type from types. We don't have types yet, but we are going to create them in a second, of course. Just we need an import right now. Okay, when the types are imported, we need to create initial state for our application. Right now we will pass just users as an empty array, and that's all what we are going to have as an initial state for users reducer. And after that, let's create a function that will define the store based on a switch statement. Let's call the function users, and let's pass initial state and action as parameters. And let's define the switch statement, which the main parameter will be action type. And the first case will be get users. And we'll pass users as action payload. Of course, we need a default, which will be our state. Cool. So we have a basic reducer right now. So it's time to create types and action. But before we will go to creating actions and types, let's go to our index.js file and to our root reducer, and let's add our users reducer inside the combine reducers method. Next step in our React Redux application is to create types.js file inside our Redux folder, and there we are going to define types of our actions. Let's start by export const getUsers is getUsers. We'll need just this one for now. Later we will of course update it. Okay, when that's ready, we can go and define an action. Inside the actions folder, let's create users.js file. And inside that file, let's import types. And let's define a function getUsers, which will be our action. Right now we'll pass the parameter users. Our type will be getUsers and our payload will be users. Cool, the action is ready. So we have to create some UI to handle our users inside the Redux application. I would like to use Bootstrap. That's why I'll place the CDN inside index.html in a public file to make it accessible. You can of course get Bootstrap by installing it with yarn. And after that's ready, let's go and create components folder inside our src folder. And inside that components folder, we will need two components. One will be card component and the second one will be user component. Our card component will be like a single card. So let's start by importing React and defining a functional component. Let's call it card, let's pass props, and let's return some UI. I already have the props passed, but of course feel free to play with that and maybe to change a little bit the UI, because I know what kind of props we are going to pass here. Okay, we can export default card right now to make it accessible in other components. And let's go to users component. Let's start also by importing React. And let's define users functional component as well, and let's import card component because we'll use it here. Okay, now we can define users component and we can return some simple UI with card. Okay, right now we are going to use useEffect to handle the action and dispatch it in our component. So let's import useEffect hook. And besides that, we are going to use hooks for Redux, which is useSelector and useDispatch. So let's import those hooks as well. Okay, when that's done, let's define a dispatch inside our users component. So let's assign const dispatch to useDispatch, and below that, let's get users from our state. So let's define constant users and let's use useSelector hook to get the users. After that, let's create a useEffect, and inside useEffect, let's dispatch getUsers action. Of course, we have to import the action, so let's do that as well. And for our action, we have to pass some users right now. We don't call API yet. So let's pass some example user. Our user will have ID, name, and the company. Object. Inside the company we'll have a name and catchphrase. So I'll paste it from the API that we'll use later. And let's define when this useEffect should be called. Okay, so let's go to the UI again and let's load the cards if we'll have the users. Let's use map, and we'll also need to pass the parameter to our card component. So let's pass the user and let's define the key, because React is like very catchy about that. So we'll use user ID. Okay, yes, yeah. This parenthesis, and in case when user's length is less than 0 or 0, then let's define some paragraph saying that there are no users. Cool. Let's export the component. go to our app.js file. So we need to implement the component there to make it visible. Let's delete all those unnecessary stuff and let's import users component. And let's use it inside the app div. Cool. Let's do some styling. Let's remove all those unnecessary styles. And let's add styles for app. We will add margin 5%, and for card let's add margin 10 pixels. Okay, cool, great. Wyciąć poprzednie. Okay, the next thing that we are going to do is to install Redux DevTools. We will install it to be able to understand what's going on and to see what kind of action are dispatched. So let's go to our store.js file and let's import compose from Redux. And let's redefine our store a little bit. Okay, we've got our extension. Let's just put this create store in the parentheses. And right now we should have our developer tools ready. Let's check that out. You of course can see our user. Let's find the Redux tab here, and voila. Here you can see what's going on, which action, which kind of action type actually is dispatching, and how the state looks like. Great. Right now we are going to change our application totally because we are going to use API calls to get data from the API. And for that we will need a middleware. We are going to set up Redux-Saga middleware. If you would like to find out more about middlewares, go to the article about this video, like the bigger version, and there you can read more about different types of middlewares and what exactly middleware is and why we should use it. Okay, so now let's go to the console and let's install Redux-Saga. Okay, let's go back to the code. Let's start by defining a new folder called Sagas in our Redux component. Inside that folder, let's create another file called user saga and index.js. Let's open user-saga.js and let's start importing the necessary methods. Let's import call, put, and take every from Redux-Saga. Effects. Cool. And first of all, let's define our API URL. We are going to use JSON placeholder with users endpoint here. Free API, so you can check that out in the internet. And for right now, let's define the function that will get our data from API. So we'll use fetch here, and we'll call the function getAPI. Let's define headers. Let's define a method. And let's use then callback and catch. For the errors. forgot the parentheses on JSON, so let's add them. Okay, right now we will start creating generators for our Sagas. Generators are the functions in JavaScript with this small star. Let's call the first one fetch users. It will have action as a parameter, and here we will use try catch. So in try we will get our users from get API, and we will dispatch the success action. It will be called get users success. And let's pass the users as a payload. Okay, and now let's catch in case of the error. In this case, we will dispatch failed action. We'll pass the error message. Okay, and right now let's define another generator which will be listening for the get users request action, so it will be able then to call fetch users. So let's call it user Saga, and let's use here take every method for listening the action type that we need. Okay, and just let's export this user Saga because we will be using that in our index.js file. Okay, so let's go there and we will define the Okay, so let's go to our index.js and let's create a code here. First of all, let's import all. Then let's import user Saga. And let's create the combined Sagas. So if we'll have more of them, we can create root Saga and we can put more Sagas inside, so they will be listened and called. Right now we have just user Saga, so let's put it. But if we would have more, we could put them here. And right now we'll need to apply middleware to our store. So let's import apply middleware from Redux. Let's define our middleware, like Saga middleware. Okay, let's import this create Saga middleware method as well. And also let's import root Saga from our index.js file. And right now, inside the compose in the store, let's use apply middleware and let's pass Saga middleware right there. And we have it injected in our store. Cool. Now we just need to use Saga middleware to run our root Saga. Okay, cool, that works. So right now we can probably set up our different types because they changed. So let's change getUser for getUserRequest. Let's copy to make similar but with success, because we still have to handle the reducers, so we'll need those types. And the last one will be getUsers failed. Cool, let's save. And let's go to our reducers. We will start by changing the initial state. We will add loading setup to false at start, and we will add error setup to null. Okay, and now the first case will be getUsersRequested, where we will turn on the loading to true. So we know that the action happens. Okay, another case will be success. And here we will update the loading. We'll set it to false because it's not loading anymore. And we will pass users as action users. Cool. And the last one will be with fail. And there we will update error and loading as well. So let's return loading to false and error to action message. Cool, it's ready. And right now we need to change a little bit in our user components. So let's remove our fake user from here because we don't need it anymore. And after that, let's take some more values from our reducer, from our state, sorry. And let's take loading and let's take errors. Okay, error. And let's do some changes inside our return statement. So in case of loading, let's pass some loading text. Okay. Here let's add the condition that it shouldn't be loading. And let's add condition for errors as well. It shouldn't be loading as well, and then we can pass the message here. Now let's see. Oh, well, we forgot to change our action type, so let's go and let's do that. Here we should change to getUsersRequested. And there's another bug. Okay. Oh, we imported it badly, so let's go to our Sagas index.js file and let's change it here to Redux-Sagas. Okay, great. So right now you can see that all the data from the API is loading, and also you can see what kind of actions were performed here. So our Saga works correctly. Our middleware, our Redux, everything is totally fine. Here we can use this option to go once again and see what happens. Great, congratulations and thanks for watching. Congratulations! You've just created a simple React.js application with Redux and Redux-Saga. I hope it wasn't too difficult and you understand everything. And let me know what you are using for state management in your applications, and if you are using Redux-Sagas or maybe Redux-Thunks or maybe something totally else. And remember to visit us on our blog, because we are sometimes posting different articles which are not on YouTube. So I encourage you to check it out. Okay guys, thank you for watching and I hope to see you all in the next video. But before bye, remember to subscribe the channel and about thumbs up if you like the video and also leave some comment, it would be really nice. Have a nice day! Bye!